Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
This is Sunbelt Commissioner Keith Gill, and I listen to the Funbelt Podcast.
This is the Funbelt Podcast, part of the Believe Network.
Hosts the Dusty Thibodeaux of Warhawk Report, Jeremy Harper of Howlraiser, and Shane Mettlen of the Daily News Record.
I think it's potentially a very good week for the Sunbelt.
But I'm just kind of going off on a random rant. It's just frustrating. Before we get started, let me tell you about Bet Online. It's the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics, baseball, and Formula One. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online, the game starts here.
So once again, Dusty and Jeremy went to New Orleans without me.
Yes.
Left me behind. I've left out once again for the third year in a row. They go have a good time without me, which means I got to get caught up. I got to find out what happened in New Orleans, whether we're talking about in the Marriott, on Bourbon Street. We'll stick mostly to like what happened in the hotel.
That's a better
Media Days.
Yeah.
But guys, fill me in. First off, I guess just overall impressions of what's going to happen in the Sun Belt this year. Now that you've met everybody, you guys must have foolproof predictions of what's going to happen when we get onto the football field.
Predictions? I don't know about predictions because you know what? You interview these coaches. I think Thibs is going to back me up on this. It's a lot of coach speak, right? It's like a lot of, everything's played on the gridiron. We're still assessing. And like I feel like only like maybe 4 teams have named their quarterback. So there's a lot of like, well, we don't know yet who we have on the field. We'll figure it out. I didn't get like a sense of where the Sun Belt is shaking out. Thibs, do you get like any sense of who was like the top honchos? I mean, you got a sense of some of the teams that were like saying, well, we got kind of some work to do to catch up. But for the most part, everybody's like, yeah, we're ready to compete this year.
It was the extremes. Either you already knew what they were coming in, i.e. with Joey Aguilar at App State, or it was a bunch of question marks and nobody knew anything. When we talked with head coach Bryant Vincent, he would not even tell us that his quarterback was going to be a general on the field.
And wouldn't commit to booty.
He was not giving up anything on the booty.
No, he was not giving up the booty. So yeah, you get to talk to all these people, Shane. And it's really fun. It's really interesting, but it's also kind of scripted, like it's pre-scripted. Yeah, and all these guys, they're talking to dozens and dozens and dozens of outlets, right? So they're kind of repeating again and again what you say. So Shane or Dusty and I tried to break it up as much as we could. I don't know if we got anybody off guard, Dusty. Did we get anybody off guard?
Only Bryant Vincent. When we were discussing him playing NCAA football, he was definitely not expecting that question, which was great. Other than that, maybe Coach Helton with his not wanting to believe that his players are using the NCAA football game to set up offensive schemes or to even do scouting.
Yeah, if there was one topic, Shane, that was front and center, it was the NCAA football game. That's for sure.
Yeah. So he doesn't believe that happens because I've seen that, like, even like you'll see like NASCAR guys talk about how like, hey, if we play the video game, I'll know what the track is like before I get there and stuff like. So, like, it's interesting that he kind of writes that off as being a thing, but I don't know. I think maybe there's a little bit. I mean, you get the playbook of the school right in front of you. Like, that's got to be worth something, right?
In theory, I mean, like, I'm currently in season 2 with ULM. In the game, I use the air raid offense. I don't even use the ULM playbook.
Yeah.
7-6, by the way.
But somebody wanted to get on and play against the computer against ULM, they would use ULM's playbook, right?
In theory, but how do you know what that game planning is? Because that's going to be week by week. And what does the kind of counter scouting look like when they're watching your film? Are they always going to run that draw play to the right, or do they switch it up and go to the left because you have a stronger right side of the line? I think that there's a lot of still variables that you couldn't really do that and get away with it as being your scouting mechanism or even a supplement to the scouting.
Yeah, and Shane, we did ask one of the coaches, one thing that said that kind of flashed the light inside of me was it seems like that would be a good way to scout other teams, right? That, like you got a game with South Alabama next week. Oh, hey, everybody, make sure you play a couple games against South Alabama and get to know. And he said, you know what? I don't know if whether it's whether you get much out of the coaching schemes or the playbook or whatever, you can kind of understand who's on the roster and you can kind of see who's the kind of the stars to look out for. So I think there is a little bit of usefulness in terms of scouting a team, but I don't know how deep of scouting you can do with the game.
Maybe you got to make sure they're on Heisman mode too, so like you can get humbled a little bit going in. Like, you don't want the guys getting on there playing and then beating them 72-6 and thinking it's going to be easy, right?
Yeah.
It's humbling on any setting right now, Shane. That offensive line for any team that you play against, because I did some exhibitions with even some SEC teams. Offensive line Swiss cheese. You better be quick on the reads and quick on the throws.
All right. So, guys, outside of what everybody thinks of the football video game, who stood out to you amongst the, can't do my math too quickly, but 14x3, 3 representatives from each school, who stood out to you as like, okay, this guy was the most impressive, whether it be how they talked, what to expect from them this season, and who did anybody disappoint you just as what the conversation was like? I'll put you on the spot with that.
Wow.
So for me, the biggest disappointing interview was Arkansas State. Why? Because I wasn't allowed to partake in it. It was the Jeremy show, hanging out with Butch Jones and the 2 student athletes. Didn't even get to ask Jalen Rayner, the reigning freshman of the year, any kind of questions.
Nope.
So that was definitely the worst interview for me.
It belonged to me.
He was fanboy. Jeremy, did you get an autograph, by the way, of Jalen Rayner?
Yeah, man, we hung out. It was great. No. It was fun to hang out with the Arkansas State guys. I am very excited about the team. There were, I think you got to break that into 2 sections, Shane. There were the 5 new guys, which, you can kind of tier them up. And then there are the remaining guys, like the sort of the OGs, Kenny, GJ, right? GJ Kenny.
GJ Kenny. He was more comfortable and kind of out of his shell this year. That he actually talked a little bit better and was a little bit more open.
Yeah, and he had the big belt buckle on, the close-shaved beard, and was very confident, and that was cool. Of course, Ricky Ronnie is always a great interview. It doesn't matter if his team finishes with 3 wins or 10 wins. He's just kind of just a cool guy to hang out with. I know that Thibs has a really good rapport with Ricky Ronnie, and we had a good interview with him. In terms of, Del McGee came from Georgia State, and we were both expecting to get a sort of a dynamic interview with him because his recruiting has been really good. He comes in with this Georgia State team that's expected to finish last in the Sun Belt East, so there's not a whole lot of pressure on the guy, and he seemed just sort of low Like low
Like
energy.
he could have cared less about being there.
Yeah, we're like, oh my God, who is this guy? Then we find out he was under the weather. He had a pretty good summer cold going. So he kind of gets a pass on that.
Yeah, I admit I was a little surprised by him on the main stage anyway. Because he's kind of got a reputation of being that high energy guy who really fires people up. And then I wasn't seeing it when he got up there on the main stage, and that does make sense when it comes to him.
After our interview, Shane and I both kind of looked at each other and went, what was that? Well, that wasn't what we were expecting. And then it came down. Oh yeah, he's not feeling well. So we have to give him a pass for that. But Bryant Vincent, we interviewed from ULM. He just seems like a guy who understands how big the challenge is at ULM. He knows that he's got to recruit. And the recruiting challenge is pretty tough, especially for a school that right now is ranked at the bottom of every ranking. And he just seemed ready for that. He seemed like the guy who was ready for that. Tibbs, I don't know what you thought of Brian Vincent, but I thought he seemed like a guy who knew that it was going to be a long haul.
Yeah, I mean, even from day one when he's been introduced as the head coach, there hasn't been any really bitching from him of, we don't have this, we can't do that. It's just like, is what it is. Here's what we got. Well, let's roll with it. And how do we, move the needle just a little bit further so that we can kind of get to where we want to be, where we need to be.
Yeah, and another thing too, was impressive. He brought two genuine Warhawk men, two guys that had been with the program since they were freshmen. One was a junior, one was a senior. They had been there 3 and 4 years. I mean, guys that understood what it was like to play in Monroe and having the challenges of being a Warhawk. So that was really cool that he chose those 3 guys to be there.
It was 2 guys, but yes. And
Carl, well, I'm sorry. I meant the 2 guys. Yes.
He's still drunk, I think, from Bourbon Street there, Shane. But yeah, I mean,
had a good time.
Carl Glass, I mean, he's from Monroe. And so really getting that perspective of being the hometown guy and seeing the transformation, seeing what it's been like to be the fans, to be in the community, really gives a great perspective of how far even Bryant Vincent's moved the needle as he gets ready for his inaugural season.
Yeah. So Brian Vincent didn't do like a Biff Poggi from Charlotte last year where he got really offended by not being picked high enough and not being asked enough questions or anything. Nobody pulled that off at the Sunbelt Media Days this year, I guess.
No, but I did do some research and found that ULM does have the record for the lowest point total. Not this year with their 15, but in 2001 where they got 11 points in the coaches poll.
Yeah. So yeah, and I felt like Brian kind of understood it. He's like, yeah, we got a shitload of work to do. Another guy that puzzled me a little bit, and maybe because he wasn't comfortable in this element, was Major Applewhite for South Alabama. When you got him talking about the team and things that he was doing, he was very comfortable talking about the team. But at times, I just thought he just wasn't comfortable being there at Sunbelt Media Days. Did you feel that way, Tibbs? Did you feel like that maybe he was guarded in some way?
Yeah, he was a little deer in headlights-ish, almost as if this was his first ever head coaching gig. But I mean, he was at Houston.
Yeah, I don't know.
He had a lot more exposure there. And hell, he was the quarterback at Texas. You know that he's been in the spotlight before. But he looked like if you just ran outside, grabbed the first person and said, hey, what do you think of South Alabama's upcoming season? The look that they would have had was kind of what Major Applewhite had throughout the whole conversation.
Yeah, he seems like a guy more comfortable with a clipboard and a whistle than he was wearing a suit and talking about, to reporters. I don't know. Maybe his time at Houston sort of made him a little gun shy. It didn't help that Tibbs kept saying, South Alabama disappoints us every year, and they disappointed us last year.
I don't hide my emotions, Jeremy. What can I say?
Tibbs was not holding back. But 2 guys I think that impressed us, the new guys, Shane, was Bob Chesney from JMU, who is a very He brought that sort of Holy Cross sort of positive attitude, but also, very no nonsense. And also Jared Parker of Troy, who was to me was just a clone. He seemed like almost an exact replica of their former head coach, whose name suddenly escapes me because I don't know.
Summerall.
Yeah, John Summerall. Just a very sort of aggressive, confident guy. Those two guys really impressed me.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Chesney. Didn't really know much about him. Had seen some of his highlights of him talking when he was introduced at James Madison, but didn't really know what to expect when you kind of see him face to face. And yeah, he was as advertised. I thought also that his player representatives were great ambassadors there for the university and the program. Really liked the linebacker Dobbs that he brought over from Holy Cross. He was a great speaker and knew exactly what to say and really spoke highly of his coach and kind of that culture that he's going to bring to kind of continue the success that James Madison has seen.
Yeah, it wasn't a surprise that he brought Dobbs because he's kind of been like the spokesman since they both arrived, like because he'll mirror a lot of what Bob has to say, and you could I'm sure you could tell that last week, and I think we're going to hear a lot from Jacob Dobbs as the season goes on because he looked good in spring ball, and he's a guy that they want out there, kind of front and center, being the voice of this team. Who else amongst players? You guys, you filled me in on all the coaches. Who amongst the players besides Jacob Dobbs kind of stood out as somebody like, okay, this guy was pretty impressive?
Well, Thibodeaux, we were lucky because all three of the Sun Belt first and second team quarterbacks were there. Jordan McLeod was there, Joey Aguilar was there, and then my man, Jalen Rayner was there. So we got to interview all three of those guys. And was it just me, Thibodeaux, or did they all seem to bear sort of the same qualities? That they were quietly confident. None of them were boisterous. Like we had linebackers that we would interview, and they all had kind of big personalities. None of the quarterbacks, in my recollection, had big personalities, but they had this sort of quiet confidence about them that they were just, all of them were well spoken and were able to articulate what they were saying, but none of them were very boisterous. Not, how like Grayson McCall, he kind of like took over the room. None of those guys really took over the room. They just seemed like they just had this sort of aura about them that made you feel confident that they were going to play very well. Tibbs, did you feel the same way, or is it just me?
No, they definitely they have that QB swagger.
Yeah,
that's the best way to describe it. The guy that I'm always impressed with, and I've talked to him now 3 times, is Jalen Rayner.
yeah.
I mean, for him to be 19, 20 years old and able to just kind of carry himself with that composure as a D1 quarterback and just kind of roll with the punches, as hell, he was on our show twice and able to survive that impresses me. That really impresses me, maybe even a little bit more than kind of the smoothness there that Jordan McLeod had or even Joey Aguilar had.
Yeah, Joey Aguilar, he I think he might have been the best dressed of the three. He was just really a dapper guy, but just kind of quiet. And I was kind of expecting more of a verbose and grandiose guy, and he really wasn't. And he was very humble too. We asked him, "Hey, why?" Or Shane, or actually Thibodeaux asked him, "Why'd you come back to Appalachian State? You could have gone anywhere. You could have gone pro. You could have gone to a more moneyed university and gotten that bag." And he said, "I love my teammates and I love Boone." I mean, that was all there was to it. It was really cool to hear. So, yeah, very impressed with the 3 quarterbacks that came. Those guys were really good.
Yeah, what you say about Rayner kind of like it's the reason why I kind of feel like Arkansas State is a good dark horse pick this year. Like, just, I think, how the voting turned out was about how you would expect Texas State in the West, App State in the East. But if we're going to pick somebody outside of those, like, I kind of like Arkansas State just because I feel like what we've seen of Rayner, what we've heard of him and his maturity and everything at that age, seems like a guy who could take a huge jump this year.
Yeah, And I saw him in the spring game, and you can tell the team belonged to him. It wasn't like there was some like crusty linebacker or offensive lineman that was in charge. It was all him. And him being just a young guy, sophomore, being able to take that kind of command was really impressive to watch. Uh, I tell you, there was a real big dearth of offensive linemen and linebackers this year, Tibbs. And I enjoyed every offensive lineman that came through. I can't name their names. I can't remember who they are, but all of them were just big personalities who were just happy to be there and gave you good answers to every question that we gave them.
Here's the one that I do remember, other than obviously Elijah Fisher, the dual M,
Yeah, of
kind of
course.
as the homer pick, which he has a great personality talking off air when he doesn't feel like he has to kind of give the canned response on the interview. But Eli Russ of Troy.
He was great and huge.
The only way to describe him is that dude is freaking huge. And
So big.
the pregame meal he had on the night before he made the media circuits was something like 30 ounces of meat, 5 sides, cheesecake, bread pudding, and something else. And I don't know where it went.
It went inside of him.
Sure. I'm glad that I do not have a kid that is that big. Because I would be passing a hat looking for donations.
Yeah, he put away a lot of grub. So yeah, it was a lot of offensive linemen walking around, and those guys are huge, are big to watch. One funny thing is too, we kept asking who talked more shit. Was it the wide receivers? Was it the defensive backs? Was it the defensive linemen? I think the consensus was defensive back, right?
Yeah, it seemed like it, except for Taj of JMU. He isolated even more. He goes, "Yeah, it's me."
I
I was like, "You mean receivers? No, me, specifically me."
It's me and Justin. Yeah.
The other guy I really like talking to, my favorite back, Ismail Maldi of Texas State.
You
Love the
that
guy. Think he's a great workhorse, a great back. I think we're going to see another big season out of him. He was good. I feel like he was a little shy and timid there on the interviews. Didn't know how to take you there, Jeremy, but he was great overall. And definitely anxious to see what GJ can do with Jordan McLeod and all the new toys he has.
Yep. And you know what? Of course, Sean Clark. He was much more relaxed this year than he was last year.
Yeah.
Last year, he was on the hot seat. Everybody wanted to see him fired. And then that way he was like, "Yeah, I'm the longest tenured guy here, and things are going very well." And I even asked, "Is Appalachian State back?" And he's like, "We never left." So he was very confident. It was good.
I had a great conversation with him, and I said, "Coach," I said, there was a fan site that fired Charlie Huff in the offseason. I said, last year I know you were on the hot seat. It's like, how do you kind of tune that out so that you can just focus on it? He goes, "I don't care." He goes, "I don't read it." He goes, "Now, Mama Bear, when you start going after her and the little ones, because apparently I guess there were some things that happened at school with the kids and things like that." He goes, "Mama Bear is another story. She'll go a little buck wild and claw you." And I said, "Note to self: never go after Mama Bear."
I tell you what, though, the people that have gone after me personally for a negative story has never really been the coaches themselves. It's been their wives. So I'm like, oh shit, I'm in a lot of trouble when the wife is after me.
So you guys gave us a pretty good rundown.
Okay.
Media days. Let's hear about media nights. Because everybody's always got like a good story of running into one of these people after hours. Something coming out of that. Not to get anybody in trouble, but there's always an interactive conversation or interaction or something that happens outside of the media hotel.
The only people I saw after hours were media people, Tibbs. I don't know if did you see any coaches or players like tearing down? I didn't see that.
No, I really didn't. I went out with some SIDs and we just kind of shot the shit around and ate, drank, be merry, and have a good time. I feel like we walked miles on end because one SID from Troy would not make up his mind about which bar we wanted to go to, and then finally we found a place with stupid cheap drinks, and I'm glad that we had somewhere to be that night. Otherwise, that could have been an ugly, ugly night.
Yeah, here's the thing though, and here's what there's this idea. It's at New Orleans, and there's a lot of party hardying, and it probably is. But man, people are up at like 8 o'clock downstairs getting their interviews set up.
No, Jeremy's up at 8 o'clock. Us
The
working
first-
class folks are there before.
The first morning, I was up early. I got up at 6:30. I was down there with you. The second morning, maybe not so much. But Kara Ritchie and her partner, whatever his
Matt
name is.
Stoltz.
Thank you, Matt Stoltz. They were out there recording it, or they were on the air at 7 in the morning. So we were the second ones down, and we're like, good God, you guys have been here a half hour already working. So really, the media is working pretty hard. I mean, it's a long damn day. I mean, we had 7 interviews, day one. Day two, we had 8. So it's a lot of work. But at night, you find a place for some cheap beer, some maybe a po' boy somewhere. I think the first night I had about 4 Sazeracs. Sazeracs, does that sound right?
I don't know. The guy was putting something in your drink, and all of a sudden, Jeremy was like, "I'm going to bed." All right.
It's a New Orleans old fashioned. I can't remember exactly how that works out, but I had about 4 of those and went to bed. I went to bed, and Tibbs was like, "We're on our way to the casino." That never happened, though, right? You didn't make it to the casino.
Never went gambling.
Okay. I thought you were on your way to the casino. And I was like, no, I'm not going to the casino. I'm going to bed. I shit you not, though. I was up in my room by 10 o'clock both nights. So I did pretty good. I was okay. I was an all right man.
The food, Jeremy. What about Media Day food? I love the snacks. Shane, they gave us king cake. I was hoping for beignets like last year, but we didn't. We didn't get that. We just had some pretty damn good king cake. The food was but king cake will always make you fat and happy.
I was happy. I was happier with the breakfast this year. This year it was eggs and biscuits and bacon. They had like real breakfast. It wasn't like here's some pastries. I liked it this year. I tell you what, though, what was I surprised, Thibodeaux? I don't know if you noticed this. We did not get any swag.
There was no swag.
Sunbelt usually gives you a swag, a water bottle, a backpack, something. No swag this year, and I wonder why that is. Do we not?
Because we're having to pay for the big boys in their NCAA settlement.
I bet that's what it is. Shane, ask us about Keith Gill.
Well, that's the one person I talked to this week.
You talked to Keith?
Yeah, I talked to him.
We talked to Keith. You talked to Keith
too?
To
him later in the week. But okay, yeah, I mean, your overall impressions on just what Keith had to say. I know you wrote about it. I wrote something similar too about how he's not giving up ground, even though things might get a little more difficult. It was I guess a vote of confidence.
I'd be interested in what Thibodeaux thought about the interview we had with him. When he came to us, we were pretty much the last of his cycle, right? I mean, he maybe had him 1 or 2 after us, but we're pretty much at the end. And you could tell that he was a little worn out because he had spent 2 solid days going for, I mean, I was watching him. He was like a bee, just pollinating table after table, spreading his wisdom, right? So you could tell he was probably a little tired, but I sensed in him, Tibbs, also a little bit of defiance. Like when we were talking about some of the other conferences, namely the American Conference, talking about maybe there should be a group of 5 playoffs, maybe there should be a separate group of 5 poll, he was really just kind of agitated about that. He was like, I don't know why we would give up any ground. And he just seemed a little aggravated by that. In fact, at the end of our interview, you could tell he was done with us. Did you feel that way, Tibbs?
Yeah, he was not happy with us by the end of it. He was bored, tired, whatever, that he just started squirreling off and was like, "Oh, Jeremy, look at your iPod case there. That's cool."
What kind of bullshit is Clemson and Florida State coming to the Sun Belt? We like to know. And he was like,
Yeah,
no.
there was no time to really bullshit with him, and I don't agree with a lot of what he said of how we need to stay the course and be a part of this whole CFP, and we shouldn't have a separate poll, separate playoff. Yeah, we should, because as Jeremy and I were talking off air, if that Louisiana Lafayette team in when was that 2022 wasn't the best team ever in the Sun Belt Conference, and they weren't able to really propel themselves into that position, there's probably never going to be a Sun Belt Conference team that makes the CFP. And this is from somebody that loves the conference, loves the teams, loves the league, saying that.
Yeah, and Tibbs and I were talking about that earlier too, and I understand Tibbs' very pragmatic approach to that. Yeah, I come from a more perspective that I think that's where Commissioner Gill is coming from. Why cede even an inch of ground? Why volunteer it? If somebody is going to try to take it from you, make them take it from you. If not, you work as hard as you can to be in that top level, to just admit that you can't make it and move on. It actually might be a smart thing to do, Tibbs. It might be the smartest thing to do, but there is something inside me that says never give up, never surrender. And I liked where he was coming from on that. So I don't know. Where'd you come from on that, Shane? Where'd you get out of what your talk with? I would be interested to know when you talked to Keith Gill, what did you get out of that?
Well, we talked a lot more about basketball, which is why he did it separately with me. It's because I'd requested some basketball time a while back, and he finally got to me. But he did get into like more just like overall, like he's doesn't want to back off in baseball or softball or soccer or in any of these sports where the Sun Belt has had success. He doesn't want to back off. He doesn't want to like give ground, even though like scholarship limits and things are going to change. And I think it goes for football too. Like, I'm not with Dusty on the idea that the Sun Belt's not going to get a team into the playoff. I think the Sun Belt has a really good shot of getting a team into the playoff one of these years. Now that it's expanded, it hurt last year that, the team that arguably had the best chance happened to be the team that wasn't eligible.
Homer take.
Bullshit.
It's not a homer take. When they're 10-0 and hosted College Game Day, they could have been in that discussion. Like, really been in that discussion. I'd have been very curious to see where they would have been ranked in the college football playoff ranking going into that App State game if they were able to be ranked.
Yeah.
So I think that's unfortunate to like just kind of have been out of the conversation, even though I would disagree that Troy should have been in the conversation along with JMU, but that's a whole other thing. But I don't think the Sun Belt is in a position where, hey, our champion's not going to be in the mix unless it happens to be a year where they just beat each other up and the conference champion has 3 or 4 losses, which may happen sometimes, but it doesn't happen that often. Usually it's a 1-2 loss team getting out of there and looks really good. And with the Cincinnatis and the UCFs and all those teams gone from the G5 conversation, I think the Sun Belt has a chance to take that spot.
Shane, do you think Central Florida won a national title?
Hey, don't
I think their claim on a national title isn't a whole lot different than a lot of pre BCS claims on national titles.
So what school are you talking about?
There's a lot. How many SEC teams went through the record books from the early 1900s trying to find some national championships in there?
Hey, everybody was very interested in winning the Alabama Sports Writers Association National Championship that had 3 voters, out of which 2 lived in the greater Birmingham area.
You know what it's time for? Plugs, promos, and parting shots. Don't you think?
Always.
I say that only because I've got something coming up, so I gotta get it done. Shane, help us out.
All right. Well, I guess I'll go with sort of a parting shot.
Okay.
We spent our time talking about the Sun Belt Media Days, as would be expected to anybody who clicks on this podcast.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, even though we don't like to give a lot of publicity to the Power 4 conferences.
God, be careful, please.
Well, I want to mention the Big Ten Media Days. Did anybody see Deshaun Foster freeze up? We talked about, Major Applewhite maybe not feeling extremely comfortable. Any coach who's a little bit nervous going into Media Days from now on can just pull up Deshaun Foster and feel better about what they're doing.
Tell us what happened.
He started talking a little bit, and then it just tailed. You'll have to look it up, YouTube or something, but it just tailed off. His opening statement just kind of tailed off into like eventually feeling like one of those really awkward first dates where you're kind of trying to describe yourself and what you like and everything, and you just run out of things to say, and you're just kind of like, yeah,
Poor guy. Tibbs, you got a parting shot? Maybe a plug? A promo?
Yeah, I'll go plugs, promos, just for in memory of Shane. Oh wait, he's here, so I can't do it in memory of Shane.
Yeah, he's not dead.
In honor of Shane, is that better?
Yeah, okay, sure.
Warwick Report, getting ready to break down the opponents for the upcoming season for ULM football. Jackson State already on the board as we get a little swagtastic in the opener. Second ever meeting against the Tigers. Won the previous one, handing Coach Dion one of his 2 losses as they won 12-7 over the Tigers. All field goals all the time in Malone Stadium. Hopefully it's a little bit better showing this upcoming year, but we'll find out at the end of August.
That's part of the quest of winning 2 games, right? I mean, that's what the big question is can the Warhawks exceed the expectations of Vegas and win 2 games?
3 games.
I thought it was 1.5. I thought it was set at 1.5. Is that 2?
Well, 1.5 is if you use our sponsor, Bet Online.
Yes, which I do religiously.
Was 1.5, but if you went anywhere out in the desert, it was 2.5.
Okay. Ooh. Okay. All right. Okay. Wow. Okay. So more interesting odds to me. My promo. No, what was it? Plugs, promos, and parting shots. I got a parting shot. Is guys, do you enjoy the Summer Olympics?
Nah.
Oh, wow. Shane, tell me you enjoy the Summer Olympics.
I do, although it gets harder, I think, maybe as I get older or as things change.
That's funny to me because as I get older, I enjoy the Summer Olympics even more. And I really like the odd sports like archery or table tennis, badminton, trampolining. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I dig like the women's gymnastics. The swimming is on right now, and I love it. It's been very interesting to watch. When it's track and field, I'll watch that day and night. I love, though, the sort of more obscure sports. It just draws me in. And here's the reason why I like the Summer Olympics, though. I kind of nailed it down. It's because for 3 years, or for the past 3 years, we didn't have this this excitement of sports leading up to the college football time, right? Now we've got this sort of this infusion of sports that kind of takes us from away from this quiet space that we're in from the end of July and all the way to the end of August, where we have to kind of wait for college football. We can fill that time, guys, with ping pong and badminton and that gymnastics things where they have the ribbon and synchronized diving. Guys, did you watch synchronized diving yesterday? It was outstanding. Oh my
No,
God.
I saw the guy from the Philippines, though, do the good old backbuster that gave me hopes that I could be an Olympian.
You could be an Olympian if you could do the backbuster. So I love the Olympics, not only because I like watching these sports, but because it gives me my mind something to watch and enjoy as I wait through these last 100 days to get, or I guess it's more like last 30 days, to get to the college football. And thank God for the Olympics.
And thank you, Jeremy, for showing up. I won't say sober. I won't say right-minded in New Orleans.
I was completely sober for some of the time.